All right, all right. Hey, everybody. It is the 18th of April, 2024. We are chugging along, and this is probably, I guess, our last open spaces before the Bitcoin halving of 2024. Here we are, April 18th. We get together on Wednesdays and Thursdays for open spaces. And the way open spaces work is whoever shows up, shows up. We talk about some things that we might want to work on or discuss, and then we jump in and we get started. So as usual, I'll set a timer for 2 minutes. Even if you don't have anything to add to this board, I really like these 2 minutes. I need 2 minutes like this every day just to collect my thoughts. So I like doing this together. I hope this is useful time for everybody. Let's just set the timer. You guys know the drill. If you don't have access to Miro, just drop a note in the chat or unmute, and we'll get those notes onto the board. Otherwise, see you in a minute and 50. All right. So it looks like a short list today. I see Alex shared next steps after logging in at V2 on Domio. And I'd be happy to share that. And that would segue nicely into just looking at PPBL 2024 together. My goals today, and I'd love to bring them to collaborative work with this group, is to think about what demos we want to build and to align on how we're going to share some of that content. I have some ideas that I want to put in writing there. And then to draft a content release calendar so that we're able to say, okay, module 101 is going to be released on this date, and so on and so forth through the rest of the course. So eager to set those expectations and to have some dates on the calendar. Um, Anything else before we just jump right into these things? These are the only stickies we've got. Okay. Cool. Let's just jump right in. I'm already on Miro, so I want to just jot a few things down here, maybe in regards to number one right here. And then I'll switch over to the Andamio view, and Alex will just do a quick review of this step right here. But I wanted to just talk about this one, okay? Demos, because there's a few implications here. And this is a good chance for us to make sure that this is clear. So we know that we're building a course called Plutus Project-Based Learning 2024. Great. And last year, what we did is we hosted the course at plutuspbl.io. plutuspbl.io. Great. And the content is still there, but I think as a lot of you know, we've taken down the on-chain functionality for this. Last year, in addition to hosting the course at plutuspbl.io, we also had two front-end companion repositories. They were available, and they still are, through the Gimbalabs GitLab account. Okay, so we've got the deployment, and then we've got some projects in Git repos. Right? These could be on GitHub or GitLab. Okay. And last year, one of the repos that was available was actually directly the source code that was deployed for plutuspbl.io. So it had both the course content, but it also had some interesting demos, and we took people under the hood. And by the time module 203 came around, where people were minting their own NFTs, the assignment for students was to submit a merge request. It's the same thing. GitHub calls it a pull request. GitLab calls it a merge request, just to clear up any ambiguity there, right? So call it a PR. We had students submitting a PR to the Plutus PBL repo to add their NFT to the project, or to add their version of the faucet project here, okay? But we also had a companion repo, okay? We called it, I need to look it up, but it was like the PPBL front-end starter or something. And I'll look up exactly what we called it, and we'll get that link. But this was a separate demo that anybody could pull down as they were starting to learn about how things worked. And they could use it, right, to make their first mesh interactions or that kind of thing, right? And so this is better if this goes here, right? That's kind of what we did last year. Now, of course, front ends are not the only things we need repos for, right? We also need Plutus example repo or a starter, right? For example, a repo that someone can, one, clone locally and run using Nix, right? All that nonsense. Or they could open the repo in Demeter run, use it, right? And this gets us back in. We know the problems of asking people to do this part if they're not actually interested in it. And we've already talked about, we're going to de-emphasize this, but we might still have some students who actually want to do this. And it's still a question exactly, when do we introduce that? How much do we expect people to do it? And how do we support people to decide whether they need to do this? But we know that we probably want some example Plutus code that people can look at. But of course, that's not all we're looking at anymore. We also want an Aiken example, right? Same thing. And maybe others. Right? Perhaps there's a Helios one, for example.
There absolutely is.
Right, good. So now we can start to see there's a variety of code bases that we want to already have available as resources for learners. And here's the good news. This is the best way to build a course, okay? The best way to write a lesson in anything that we might call a project-based learning course is for us as teachers and educational content writers to do projects first. Because when we do, we figure out the things that are easy for us to do. We figure out the things that are easy for us to explain to ourselves. And we figure out the things that are challenging, where we get stuck, which is really exciting. Because when we get stuck as developers building these example repos, those places we got stuck are exactly what we want to recreate for the learner experience. Okay. And so in a lot of ways, 200, 300 level course content, it's all about building first and taking notes on what you learned along the way. And I see, hey, Newman, we got Nelson, Newman, anybody else? Harsha, hey, guys. So if all of this makes sense, here's the biggest difference, right? So we know we're going to have a set of repos like this. And let's call these. What do we want to call these? Are these all examples? So here, there's some subheading here. Boop. And these are all in a family or a set, right? Isn't a set the basic type of mathematics? And we know there's going to be repos for these. So this is a subset of all the repos we're going to need. Yeah, Newman, we were just recording today. I'm in a different place and wasn't able to get the recording set up. My question is, if we have front end stuff and then we've got validator, smart contract stuff, what do we call this group? Right? Can we call all of this Plutus? Because it all compiles to UPLC, or do we call this smart contracts?
with the front end.
No, the smart contract part, what's the set of Plutus repo, Aiken repo, and Helios repo called? Smart contracts, validators, on-chain stuff.
But they have transactions as well.
And so what do you want to call it?
Well, if you build them, you are a Cardano engineer or Web3 engineer.
Let's call this, for now, I'm not happy with this entirely, but it's the idea. Let's generally call this Cardano smart contracts for brevity.
Cardano DApp component, maybe.
Cardano DApp.
Or app component or DApp component.
Right. And that's different. You think that is separate from front ends?
Front ends are kind of a known thing, which we kind of have an idea of. And what do we attach to a front end to make it into a DApp? It's a yeah, it's a
Cardano
bunch
app
of
components. Yeah. Good enough.
Yeah.
You could say e.g. smart contracts. Chain. Front end also includes some off-chain code, as in TX building, as in mesh TX building, for example. Okay. So we start to understand this breakdown. I know I'm zoomed way out right now, sorry. But we start to understand this breakdown of stuff, right? We're going to have several different repos that serve as resources for learners. By building them, it's helping us to create content. And it's always easier to teach if you already have an example in your back pocket, right? If you're starting a lesson from nothing, that takes a lot of creative energy. If you're starting a lesson, but you already have, say, the faucet project built, and you need to build a lesson that guides people to review that code or to try to recreate it, that's a much easier lesson to write. I'm sorry about the noise in the background. I'm just going to mute for a second here.
Yeah, just as a side note, hey everybody, it's Newman. Yeah, it would be good to have the 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 Git repo sort of organized in a way for learners to understand it, because it's like a hurdle, I think, for beginners or for novice. If it doesn't have like a good README, or if it's not clear. 'Cause I think there was like, yeah, it would be nice to have it properly sort of organized or in a cool map, so you can kind of know where and how to get things. It's definitely a hurdle for new folks. Yeah. Probably.
Sorry, I was just waiting out some machine noise. Yeah, I agree. And Newman, this is kind of almost a driver that ties back to our primary driver, right? We need this initial content that we're offering to learners to explore,
Yeah.
to deliver on our primary driver, right? It needs to have that accessibility and give people we don't want people to work too hard just to see the high level. We want them to work hard once they're into the story, but we don't
Exactly.
work too hard to
Exactly. We don't want them burning up their resource attention points on just figuring out the basic stuff. And I do think that we do want to capture that level of user, of learner. So somebody that is not necessarily familiar with those things. Maybe they're an NFT artist, or some other, have some idea. And even if it's just to collaborate with others, it's important to have that skill, and to make to for this place to be the place that explains the Git file structure, or the common file structures of one of these projects. That it's gonna look like a React project, but it's gonna have this, and they all look a little different. So that would be kind of a cool learning target. I can navigate a Git repo.
Mhm. So each of these repos has a different structure. As in, a uh, uh, React project
Right.
versus a Haskell project. As just one example, Aiken, Helios, et cetera, et cetera. And what we should try to do, we should ensure that each repo follows like a canonical style, right? We're not trying to innovate in the structure of a React project, for example. We're trying to show people a familiar structure, and the same should go for each of these, so that when people learn by using the demo repos that we're talking about, they are well prepared now to look at another well-structured repo for, say, an established project.
Yeah.
And note, right, is there a learning target here? We can check that question against the list of learning targets we've already got. Okay, so if all this makes sense, and if it doesn't, please stop me. Okay, now there's this is the biggest change this year. Okay, this year, the course content itself will be hosted via Andamio, right? We've built a Cardano native learning management system. It's an opinionated learning management system in that it emphasizes defining what and why you're going to teach first. That's in the form of student learning targets, and then crafting lessons and assignments to deliver on those intentions, right? This is it's a strong opinion that can feel limiting at first, but it actually opens up the opportunity for people to really align at scale by following this entry point. I'm not building a course just blindly. I'm defining what I want to teach first in the form of learning targets, and then striving with the team of people building content to make sure that we are indeed teaching those learning targets, right? That's what Andamio does for us. And then it allows us to put a record of those agreements on chain. Plutus PBL is still going to exist, but it's no longer going to host directly the lessons, because those are over here. Plutus PBL is just going to be a live demo. So what are some differences between these? Well, the demo, I need a different color that we haven't used yet. I don't know. Right. The demo is all going to be on pre-prod. Okay. So for example, we're going to have people mint a token when they start the course, just like they did last year. That token is going to be minted on pre-prod, because the purpose of this token is to allow people to participate in other assignments moving forward. What are some examples of those assignments? Well, an early example, I guess, the first example is, hey, mint this token right now. You're on pre-prod now. Good. If you want to be a Cardano developer, you got to know about pre-prod. That's what Plutus PBL is all about. You're going to mint the token in a very similar way to last year. And then an example of an assignment would be changing a lucky number on that token, or using that token to mint an NFT, right? That only you can mint, for example. Or the Faucet project, right? Which allows us to give privileges, the ability to draw on some faucet if you hold this token. And these are all demos that are essential to the projects that people are going to be doing as they move through the course. And sure, they do create an on-chain record of achievement. It's just that, like last year, that record is on pre-prod. Distinguishing from that, people have the option, when they're taking a course in Andamio, of also minting a token. But that token has a very different purpose from this one. First of all, that token would be on mainnet. And all it's going to do is be a record of people's achievement in this course. Did you finish module 100? Did you do the assignment and complete module 101? And so forth. That's going to be on mainnet right here. And people are going to be able to view the content without doing anything on mainnet. But if they want to have the emergent credential, right? If they want to build up an on-chain record of these achievements, that's not just their participation in the course over here with this unique PPBL 2024 token. Let's write that. PPBL 2024 token, something like that, right? Over here, you get an Andamio access token. Plus the results of participation in PPBL 2024. Okay, so I really want this distinction to make sense before we keep going. So what questions do people have about what I'm sharing right here?
So you can be a student of the Plutus PBL, but without getting an Andamio network access token. These are separate things.
Correct.
Okay.
But you can't have any proof on mainnet that you did Plutus PBL 2024 without the access token.
Aha, so that would be the reason to have that access token. And is that something that we want folks to do? Like, I mean,
that's the grand experiment, and we have a lot of hypotheses, right? And what we know for sure is that people who hold a network access token that says they've completed PPBL 2024 are going to have access to contribution opportunities.
aha, so that would be a prerequisite for contribution opportunity.
Right. In order to mint some future contribution token. Right. So, and just to talk a little bit about how the on-chain part works, right? You get some results. Okay, you did modules 101, 102 up through 203. Great. First 6 or 7 modules of the course. That's all in datum. And we know that anything that's in the on-chain datum can be validated against in a minting validator. So I could write a minting policy that results in a unique policy ID such that I know that anybody who holds a token with that policy ID has achieved a certain minimum in one or more courses. And I could build a policy ID that says, hey, you need to finish all the 100 level modules in Plutus PBL, Mesh PBL, and Aiken PBL, for example. Right? I'm not saying we should do that.
Sure.
We
Sure.
could,
But, yeah.
right? And we can set those rules. And what we're going to do coming out of this course is have a contribution token on mainnet that can be automatically minted by anybody who's achieved a certain minimum in the course right here. And then with that token, they're going to be able to commit to tasks with real tokens attached to them from a treasury.
Yeah, awesome.
How's everybody else feeling? What do you think? So, good.
Is this going to be a separate task than writing the content and being the editor of the content? So like
Yeah, so now we have to think about what's the flow between these things. Okay, so like we're gonna have this course published, and the the primary pathway into this course will be to show people, hey, Plutus PBL 2024 is live. You can access it at this link, and it'll be a link from Andamio.io. You can go there, you can start looking at the content. But the moment people are in that, as right away, right? In order, for example, to do that first assignment in the first module where you are minting your token, you'll be linked from a lesson here to the live demo here. And that's a pattern that will continue throughout the course, right? There'll be a lesson, you can watch the video, you can read about it, you can commit to the assignment. All of that happens here in the Andamio platform. But often, when it comes time to do the assignment or to view an example, those examples will be live at the Plutus PBL website. And the source code for those examples will be in these Git repos. Okay. So what we're talking about over here is just building up a wealth of source material that at the end of the day, like I described earlier, makes it easier to teach. Right? It's just easier to teach if I already have a project. And that's really what this is serving. Right. And over here, the lessons can be short and sweet and get people to jump into those examples and play around with them. Okay, lesson 101.2, go over to Plutus PBL and do A, B, and C. You'll know you're successful if X and Y and Z. And you come back over here. Maybe you go and say, okay, now that you've looked at this from a user perspective here, let's go take a look at the source code. Here's the front end that makes this possible. Here's how we built this transaction in Mesh. Here's how we built this validator logic in Helios, for example. Steve, was your hand up?
Yeah, when you keep an example or you have examples over there in the repos, do you keep failed examples too? To point out how people screw up.
Absolutely, right? Like putting vulnerable code up on pre-prod and showing people, like we've done this before. I actually don't have any data on how many people took us up on this. I think this is one thing that we can improve. But there have been examples in prior iterations of the course where we've shown people, hey, like you could steal these pre-prod tokens right now. Let's look at how.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what I was saying was we have the deliver to the CBL proposal, and the scope of the work is I mean should be extended to include this, right?
Okay.
And I was looking at the phases as defined in the proposal, and there should be another scope of work that should be allocated time and resources into it. And
Good. Okay. So yeah, that's the perfect thing to align on next. Let's just look at this, what you just shared. So I have a proposal here from prior experience, but I might be thinking of it wrong. So let's get this right. Okay. When I originally drafted this proposal and we got it through so that it's now in progress, in terms of resources required, what I said here is exactly what Nelson was just saying, right? We have budget for people to write lessons and to edit them. Okay. And we recognize, right? This is a small budget. It's what we have right now. So we're going to take it as far as it goes. And it only talks about authors and editors. But the way I see this is that the author of a lesson is not just responsible for writing the words on the page, but also providing any resources that that lesson links out to. All right. So if I was going to take on writing the lesson that introduces for the first time a Plutus validator, say like the faucet contract, in order to write that lesson, I also have to build the source code, right? The demo to accompany it. And that probably will take me more time than writing the lesson itself. But the good news is after I build that demo, writing the words on the page of the lesson is easy, or easier. I'm saying this from experience, right? Sitting down to write a lesson after you've built something, and the purpose of the lesson is to help bring somebody else into that work. I think it's a delightful experience, and I want to see who else can join in having that experience. But you're right, there's not a budget line right here for writing those demos in the first place, because that's all encapsulated right here. How does that feel to everybody?
And there's also maintenance of the project, right? If it's going to be a Git repo with multiple demos, there should be maintainers who makes everything work, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yeah. That's the work for which we, in the long run, really, really want to have a budget. And at this moment, we don't yet. And that's as a member of Gimbalabs, I'm delighted to contribute to that work, right? And so for like, I'm definitely, I want to commit time to that. Other people are invited to, but people who opt into doing that will be doing so knowing that there's not a budget for that, right? I'm opting into it knowing full well there's not a direct budget for that. But I want to do it. So if anybody else is in the same position, you are welcome to join and contribute that way. And we can write additional proposals. We know, right, in this one, we want to review how we're doing and draft additional proposals for the next phases of work described above. Phases 3 and 4, where were those? Is that in the background section? Outcomes, details, timeline. It's in one of these phases. So yeah, this proposal and the budget to go with it of 13,500 ADA is to deliver phases 1 and 2, convening the team and planning the course. This is ongoing. We're doing it right now. And writing the course, and that's the budget below. When ready, right, this bit right here, we can make a new proposal with budgets to handle these parts. And by doing phases 1 and 2, anybody who participates in this work is going to notice the pain points. We call those tensions. And if you have a tension, you can write a driver. And if you write a driver, you can write a proposal. And if you write a proposal, you get to decide what resources are required for it. And then once you bring that to the rest of the team, we can decide together whether to deploy those resources to your proposal. And that's kind of why this one is written like this. We're not trying to do it all. This was a proposal to do these parts, right? And to learn together enough to write the next proposals that come out of this. We might find that maintenance of these several Git repositories is causing tension. And if it does, we should welcome that as good news, right? And somebody can take on turning that tension into a proposal.
Yeah, I was yeah, I was thinking, you know, how that might be incentivized in such a way that, you know, people take up that task, and that's a task that people will love doing. So it's a project, working on a project, right?
Mhm.
So rather than, you know, someone taking responsibility about it, like you are volunteering here, like how other people can come up with such scope of work that might fit into, you know, extending this proposal, and uh, yeah, people can do those work like
Yeah.
what you're saying here.
100%. 100%. And the playbook for that, we are learning in real time that the playbook for what you're describing, Nelson, is well established. What's the playbook? Notice attention, write a proposal driver, write a proposal, and bring it to the team. Right? That's what we want to happen. And my goal in volunteering, but also opening the door to this work, and this is slow, right? I could argue that if we just kept a smaller team and weren't trying to do this type of team building work in this kind of semi-public setting, we could have made a lot more progress on writing content by now, right? But we're taking the approach of looking governance first. Why? So that tensions can emerge. Why? So that new drivers can emerge. Why? So that new proposals can emerge. Why? So that we can build this kind of governance together, which is a more impactful outcome than just a couple of people, as in previous years, holding themselves up and writing the course all at once. Okay. So we're a little bit behind the schedule of previous years. But the reason is, since January, governance and kind of figuring out how we share this work, even with limited resources, that's the most important thing we're doing together right now. So yeah, everybody should, like, if you're here, you have a responsibility to pay attention to drivers and then to repurpose those drivers in this revolutionary way, right? A tension is not the same thing as a problem. A tension is an opportunity. Notice the tension and do something about it. Do what? Turn it into a driver and then turn that into a proposal. That's what we all have the opportunity to do. So there's already clearly some tensions that will hopefully emerge from this. Damn, it's really hard to manage a couple of repos. That takes work. Somebody should be compensated for that. Okay, here's the proposal, right? Let's look for those. But at a high level, if this is okay, this is how I would propose to really start building. Okay. And I really hope this idea of creating demos first makes sense to people. And this is absolutely how the approach I'll be taking in any lesson writing that I commit to.
So the idea is our student, they come to Andamio.io, they see an assignment, they have to do something. And part of this assignment, they go to GitHub, they see this repository, they clone it, and then they do work in this repository, in their clone, right?
And now if we're talking about assignments, well, what are the ways that people can generate proof that they completed an assignment? There's many possible answers to this question, but two of the easiest answers are you either create an on-chain artifact in the form of a minted token, for example, or a transaction hash, right? Maybe it's a transaction hash that includes your pre-prod demo token, right? Or you create a Git artifact like a PR to any one of these example repos. Once we have a live student demo and we have a public link to the repo that's hosting that, and then we have sections of that repo where we can point specifically to people and say, okay, your assignment right now is to open this repo, create a new file in this directory, do X, Y, and Z, and then submit a PR to that repo. That commit hash can be the proof of completing that assignment, which now serves you back here. Now the course reviewer looks at that, says, yep, no problem. I see that PR, and I'm marking you as complete on this assignment.
All right. So have a repository with some CI, and if you see a green light, that's okay.
Okay. So now one thing that I think will be on both of these in one way or another is we need a content release calendar. Okay. And this was at plutuspbl.io last year. We didn't stick to it perfectly, but at least it helped to drive our work, right? And so we want in both places a way to say, here's an outline of the course, and here are the dates that these modules are going to be live. Module 101 goes live on this date. Module 102 goes live a week later, and so on and so forth. Okay. And it'll be easy to host this calendar in both places. We might find out that one of them is more impactful than the other. That's fine. Okay. But we do want to have this public facing release calendar. And so that was the second thing on my agenda for today, right? To give a little idea of what kind of demos we need. We've started that right here, right? We haven't gone into the specifics of exactly what demos are going to be in these, and we can revisit that. But I think also that's going to be related to this content release calendar. So I'd like to jump to this topic for the next few minutes. And then after we take a look at this, maybe we can come back full circle and think about some of the first demos that need to be built. Okay. So to do this, let me switch over to Andamio. And we've gone through logging in before, but for anybody who hasn't seen this yet, oops, sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying, here we go.
If you don't have the words "you are a creator" right here, there's one step you need to do. Okay. So, and it's a silly little hacky temporary solution because we're still in kind of pre-production here. But if you head over to Studio, add, I think it's add creator. Yeah. Okay. So this is the URL. It's not linked from anywhere. You just have to watch this recording or be at this meeting to know about this link. So there it is. If you're already logged in, you go to this link, you'll tap a button right here, and just like that, okay, now you'll be a course creator. Great. And now you'll be able to look at a studio and create new courses. We're not yet guaranteeing the fidelity of this database. Okay. So if you're just starting to build content, please know that it's not guaranteed to continue to be hosted yet. Okay. And we're also building on Andamio as a business. So in the long term, it won't be free just to go to this link and add yourself as a creator. That will be a paid transaction. but we're rolling this out to friends and collaborators right now just to get started. After you tap that button, I'll be able to add you. I'm the person who created PPBL 2024 in the platform, so I have the ability to add additional people. Alex, did you tap that button yet?
Yeah, I did.
So now I should be able to find you here. Perfect. All right, good. Now you can add content to Plutus PBL 2024. Anybody else to be added right here?
Yeah, see if I'm in there.
Here you are.
Sweet.
Easy.
I love putting my names on lists. It's just the weirdest thing.
I like seeing everybody's familiar Discord, pictures. I feel kind of strangely at home.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Anybody else need to be added at this point?
James, I added myself to the Andamio platform, but I didn't put myself specifically in the PBL thingy. So I don't know. That's a separate step, I guess.
Is it okay if I add you here? Yeah, as the course manager, I have to add people to the course, which is definitely the behavior we want. We want the creator of a course to be able to make decisions about who they're collaborating with. Can I add you here?
Sure, please.
Let's do
There
it.
you have it. Thank you.
We know it. Okay, cool.
You can add me to James.
I got you
Jazz.
already. Got you.
Oh,
Yep.
How about me? I've just put my, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. All right, so now we can look at the course, right? And we know that we've already drafted a list of modules. We had a pretty good informal consensus around these being the module titles. And then I think we're at the point where we can say that the learning targets are complete for the first 4 modules, but the learning targets are obviously they're very much still in development. They haven't been written for 202 through 301 yet, right? So we still have learning targets to write at 202 and beyond. But I would say we're pretty much ready to go with content writing on 100 through 103. Okay. And so I'd like to propose here, before we even look at the learning targets, let's just screenshot this guy and bring it over to Miro for a second. Miro. So content release calendar. It's going to go in both of these places. That's great. And let's just draft some loose dates right here. All right. So what if we said that we were going to try to have module 100 live in 2 weeks? 2 weeks from yesterday would be a nice clean May 1st. And then what if we planned to release the additional lessons on a weekly cadence from there? Let's just see how this feels and then tweak it if it doesn't feel right. Oh, clean. This would have the course fully live by the first week in July. July 3rd, something. Rough thoughts, first impressions. How would this feel if this was the content rollout timeline?
So, I mean, how much of this was done last year, right? I mean, there's nothing really new here, is there? I mean, I don't mean this in
Yeah,
a disparaging way. I'm just saying,
no,
you get, this
you're
is all
exactly
about integrating it, right?
correct. And not to rehash several weeks of prior conversations, but it's sufficient enough. The differences are enough that it's easier to say that we're writing everything from scratch and then to pull in the old content whenever it works. It would actually take more work to try to start from here's everything we've got, let's revise it for 2024. That makes sense. So the learning targets have been refactored a little bit. Some of the projects will still be relevant. And yeah, there's absolutely some lesson copy from last year that all we have to do is grab it and make some minor changes. But that should be an editorial decision of whoever drafts the lesson.
You don't have to tell people how it's changed.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We can show this course should feel cohesive. People should be able to start from here without worrying about what has happened in the past.
And so, but this is still in all, this is just Plutus V2, right? You don't, this will not have V3 integrated in it. Is that going to be like lesson 400s later this year popping out? Is that what 400 would be?
What's the release date for Plutus V3?
Oh, I don't know.
See,
I
right,
don't know.
right. So
I thought it was imminent. I thought it was imminent, but it never happened. So I don't know.
when Plutus V3 is live, it's going to be thrilling to play with it.
Sure.
And what we want is a course that makes it easy to integrate some of those stuff. But let's switch back to the actual learning targets.
Mhm.
So these first 5, for example, these learning targets, it doesn't matter what version of Plutus we're on, and we can teach these, right? And we just have to keep looking. Right? Your basic faucet validator, right, which is a really nice initial validator for people to learn. I'm not yet aware of a Plutus V3 feature that is like obviously gonna change the implementation of the faucet validator. I'd love to discover one, and if we do, we can update that, right? But then the other thing to keep in mind is all we're talking about with Plutus V3 is just these first 2 learning targets, Plutus TX, right? Aiken has its own development schedule. Helios, same thing. PluTS and option, if we choose to keep these here, same idea. And we could keep going. We could give the rest of this the same treatment. Transactions, this is not going to change too much with V3. And so a lot of that stuff where we're looking at the new features of V3, if there's any that people find really compelling, let's figure out where those things fit in these future modules. And then one of 2 things will happen, right? Either the hard fork will happen while we're still writing the content and we'll be able to adapt it while we're still building the course, or the hard fork will happen after the first week in July when this whole course is live, and we'll go back through, we'll see if any of these modules should be tweaked or updated for Plutus v3, or if there's new modules we want to add. Or at that point, if there's a completely different course that we want to write, hey, now that you've done PPBL 2024, let's do this short course. It might be just 3 modules about what's new with Plutus v3, for example.
So it's my understanding there's like new whatever for governance, whatever you want to call that, commands, functions, governance functions, I guess is what I understood. Is there other stuff?
Yeah, I think the governance is, I think, the most exciting part. And like, there's a lot of little tweaks under the hood. There's some stuff that, right, people who are deep in development really understand, right? Which hashing algorithm do I want to use, for example, right?
Mm.
But yeah, governance is the most obvious one that I think we would need a new module. So yeah, we would maybe add module 206 right here, right? Getting started with governance transactions or something.
Mm.
And in a perfect world, right, it would have been nice maybe if we had this course built already and we were already building additional course material for SanchoNet. That would be great. But reality is what it is, right? So we do as much as we can.
Yeah.
And I think it's safe to start with these things. Because remember, the audience for this course is people who are new to Cardano development.
Mm.
This is how we onboard people. If we're successful, those people are going to be the next round of collaborators who we delight in spending time with, right? So many of us on this call, we initially met by participating in this course in one way or another. And so we assume that'll continue to happen. And with that, like live coding energy, right? As these open spaces sessions transition over to live coding sessions, as the course is rolling out, we're going to be building new relationships there. And then what follows July, August, September is now that cohort of people. We can all work together at looking at governance together, right? Or whatever else. We still haven't built Dandelion PBL. We still haven't built Stake Pool PBL. Aiken and Mesh are in development, but those will be interesting. Maybe something with Hydra, right? You see, the list is gonna keep going on and on. And that's why, as all, we do this first.
It's not just that. I mean, this, like you just said it a minute ago, like there's this growing noise, and it's going to grow into real priority setting in the larger Cardano community for marketing. And if you're going to market to people to come into the Cardano ecosystem, how do they onboard? And this is going to be technically how you onboard, coming to a place like this.
Right. This course is for the subset of developers who are new to Cardano development, but that's just one audience. And by naming other audiences, we can very efficiently start to imagine other courses that need to be built. And once again, right, like that's an example of attention. So just to reiterate this point, anybody here is experiencing a tension that there are other courses that ought to be prioritized, follow your nose, go with that, right? Turn that tension into a driver, write a proposal that we should build this course, write very clearly what resources would be required to build that course in terms of people's hours and the funds to support whoever contributes. Now that's a proposal that together we decide whether or not to go forward with it. And certainly, right, that nobody should expect that everybody who attends open spaces is interested in contributing to this course. Maybe you're really interested in ensuring that some other course for some other audience comes into being. Well, in the first 4 months of 2024, we've created a system together for how to make sure that work like that gets started. And we're still demoing that system by looking at PPBL 2024. But there's going to be an inflection point where each of us says, wait, I don't want to focus on PPBL 2024 right now. I want to make sure that this other course gets built. And you'll write a driver for that. You'll write a proposal for that. You'll bring it to the team and we'll decide to either do it or not. So let's suppose, take another screenshot. Let's suppose that module 100 is going live in 2 weeks. Let's grab a similar screenshot of the next 2 modules. And now each of these is going to have okay. So here's a project plan. It's not written in stone. It's just on Miro. So this can be changed. But suppose we say that 2 weeks from yesterday, May 1st, we want this module to be live. Does anybody want to commit now to writing or editing one of these lessons right here? And everybody has access to this Miro, so feel free to drop your name on one of these. The way the treasury works that we're using to distribute the funds for this work is that you can commit to one thing at a time. I think that's a really powerful way of getting stuff done, is to make one commitment at a time. So if you had to pick just one thing to commit to first, which one of these would you want to try to write? And what do you-
I'm not sure I understand it right, because like now you're saying that 1003 is a learning target, but my understanding was it is a lesson.
Ah, good. Excellent. Okay, let's talk about the architecture for a second. You're exactly right. So the number 100.3 refers to a learning target. I know how to manage my private keys. Full stop. That's a learning target. What is a module? A module, like this one, module number 100, with the title Getting Started, consists of a series of learning targets. And that's the only thing that a module must have. Once a module has learning targets, again, these are statements of why. We're taking Simon Sinek's advice very seriously right here. He told everybody to start with why. But a lot of people in practice still don't do that. We're forcing people to start with why. We're saying, why are you teaching that course? Well, because I want to make sure that people know how to connect wallets to the pre-prod network. I want them to know how to get free test data from the faucet. I want to check in and make sure they know how to manage their private keys. I want them to be able to mint this token. And I, in general, want them to be able to interact with the Cardano application on pre-prod. That is why we are building this module. Why are we building this module? That is the answer. If this is an insufficient answer, well, then we have to change the learning targets, right? And once we start with why that way, this is why we are creating this module, so that people know how to do these things. Then, optionally, we can write lessons. Each of these can have a lesson, but they don't have to. We might decide to say, well, hey, in order to participate over here, you already need to know this. We're not going to teach you how to manage your private keys. We already agree that we're writing a lesson for this, but that's an option. And we could just say, you know what? Let's just tell people this is a prerequisite, this learning target. If they don't know how to do this, go somewhere else. But if you want to keep going in this course, you need to know this. Okay, that's
I
why
just
we made
refer
lessons.
back to the discussion that this is really difficult to measure. And how do we make a learning target of something that is really hard to measure?
Excellent, because we don't measure everything. Okay, so finally, what's the last component? We have a module which must contain one or more learning targets. We have lessons that are optional for each of those. In an entry-level course, our intention is to build a lesson for each one of these. But in the long run, the way this platform is built is to make lessons optional. Okay. But then what's the last bit? The assignment. What's the assignment? This is where we assess the learning targets. Okay. This assignment assesses 3 learning targets. Here they are. Okay. And you can see that some of these have the little green dot and some of them don't. Now, this is, I don't think we do want to assess this. So, whoops, we probably checked that box by mistake. Let's go change that. In this assignment, yeah, which ones of these are actually measurable? Like Alex, I don't think 100.3 is measurable.
Right, this was my assumption when I was writing the content for it, and I wrote it as a lesson.
Right.
Or rather as a story.
And exactly. And we're not going to assess this learning target, right? All we're going to do is we're going to show people, hey, this is something you want to know. Here's a lesson about it. Okay. The lesson is effective if it helps people do this learning target. And we know that we need feedback mechanisms to make sure that people are actually learning. Okay. But in this case, it's really just the student feedback that we would use to help refine the content. We are not going out into the world and saying, hey, we know 100% sure that everybody who did this module knows how to manage their private keys. We're not assessing that. What are we assessing? Honestly, I think we should only assess this one right here, 100.4. And there might be alternatives to this, but what if that's the only one we assessed? Oops, got a little caching issue there. We got to fix that. Did it work? Okay, good. By the way, here, let me show you guys this just so you're aware of it. I just realized there's a bug right here that our cache doesn't update if I change the assignment. And that's what this little toolbox is for right here. If I tap this button, the dialog comes up. Module SLTs don't refresh cache when I update an assignment. All right, that's enough for me to remember. If anytime you report an issue like this, it goes directly to the Git repo for this application. And we can take that and we're fixing bugs constantly on this. As we use it, we're finding them. So if you find a bug or some behavior that you think should be different, just tap that button, send a report, and now there's a Git issue opened where we can fix that. All right, but back to the topic here. We never assume that we're going to assess all of the learning targets in a module. And we've talked about this before. For this one, I believe it's sufficient just to do this one. And I could argue that if somebody does mint this pre-prod token, they probably did these first two things. So I would feel comfortable checking these two boxes as well, even though the only thing I'm going to look for, right? My goal as an educator is to spend the absolute minimum amount of time grading student work. I do not want to chase people around. I do not want to create bureaucracy. I want one data point, ideally, that I can look at very quickly and I can say, yep, they did it. And that's what this is. If somebody has minted that PPBL 2024 pre-prod token, I feel safe assuming that they probably did connect their wallet to pre-prod and they probably found their way to get some test data. But I have no proof that they absolutely know how to safely manage their private keys, right? And sometimes learning targets like this one, interacting with the Cardano application on pre-prod, yeah, that's good. We're introducing it here, which is what we should do. But this is a learning target that's going to mean different things throughout the course, right? And as people move on through modules 101 into the 200s, continuing to learn, their understanding of what it means to be able to interact with a Cardano app is going to evolve as they keep learning. And sometimes learning targets serve that role. Hey, this is the map. This is where we're going. Let us show you a little bit right now. But then just know that in the rest of this course, you're going to learn more about this. And so, sorry, I know I'm saying a lot right now, but the idea is it's up to us as course designers to decide which ones of these are measurable and what's the absolute minimum we can measure to have sufficient confidence that somebody did move through this content. Because our goal is for people to learn. not to create bureaucracy. Our goal is for people to learn, not to write lessons that show how smart we are, right? Our goal is for people to learn what? These things right here, some of which create evidence. And therefore we can make this decision about what we're assessing. How does that feel to everybody? Ken, what do you think?
Oh, I was just thinking like specifically thinking about the managing private keys idea, like you don't necessarily need to have a way to prove that someone knows it, but I think that there are more effective ways of helping someone learn something like that than just going through a linear document of what things to remember. So like the idea that comes to mind is like if you had something that was sort of like a choose your own adventure story, and people tend to remember things better when they run into problems, or when like things that when they do something wrong they remember things better. And so like if you had something set up where someone could choose different paths to take, and then if they choose maybe you have a lot of different ways that they can do the wrong thing with a key. Like it doesn't have to be actually something that's really happening on chain or anything like it, but like where someone can choose a path through this story, and then it shows what can happen if people take the wrong course through a path. And it's more of a like it's a dynamic way of learning than linearly going through a set of points.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And that's why I started today with this bit, right? We're not just building linear content, we're writing lessons and often linking out to live demos. So what you just described is a live demo that could possibly be created to accompany the lesson for learning target 100.3. And so anytime we don't want to just stick to the linear words on a page that lessons enable us to do, we link out. We say, okay, look, here's the lesson is just documentation. It can have a video to go with it. That's all well and good. But you're exactly right. We need people to put their hands on things. And that's why we're going to have this live demo repo. And anytime somebody thinks of something like Ken just did right there, that's something that could be built into this demo repo. And once you get to that point, now it becomes a question of priorities, right? Because I agree with you, Ken. We could build some interactive experiences to really hit this learning target home. Given the amount of time we have, is that a priority? Every one of us can decide, right? Anybody here who wants to decide that they want to build an interactive experience to guide people to safely manage their keys, go for it. The door is open. Personally, I'm going to kind of de-emphasize this one. I think that it's something for completeness we ought to address, but I also know that a lot of people coming to this course, if our audience is Cardano developers, right? New Cardano developers, they're probably at least vaguely aware of the concept of keys. And if I'm wrong about that, we can always evolve the lessons as we go. That's the beauty here. Learning targets shouldn't change often. But the learning targets, or sorry, the lessons we use to teach those learning targets will certainly evolve over time. And if we get feedback that says, guys, you know, your treatment of that private keys lessons, I didn't learn anything from that, and you should change it, right? We take that feedback, we change the lesson. The learning target doesn't have to change. So yeah, 100%, we do want interaction. Interaction takes time to build. When we talk about dedicating our time to building that interaction, we have to make compromises and decisions, each of us on our own, to where we're going to allocate our time. All right. And so that's what I would just recommend. Ken, if you want to run with that idea, you should. And just make a good decision about whether or not there's something else that's really worth more time of digging into.
Well, that concept is basically the main idea I had about the Gimbalabs website. So there's stuff I've already been working on. It doesn't have to do directly with managing private keys. It's just that style of learning. Like there's an inductive approach to learning, and then there's the co-inductive approach, which is, I don't know, like, I don't know if we should go into more detail about that now, but it's like, there's the difference between building up a structure step by step and learning how to triage a situation where you don't necessarily know what you're going to run into next. And I tend to prefer the more of a co-inductive approach than an inductive approach to learning.
Me too. Me too. And yeah, that's why, like last year, and we should do it again this year, one of the first things we tell students is one of our goals is for students to get stuck. Why? Because that process of getting stuck and then getting unstuck is where the best learning happens. So we do want people working on doing things, right? We want you to do this assignment. When you get stuck on an assignment, right, like building your faucet validator or changing your lucky number on chain, these are active things that people need to do. And some of them will be able to do them right away after just going through some interactive lesson content. But other people, and we've seen it in previous years, they get stuck right here. And when they bring their questions about changing their lucky number to a live coding session, that co-inductive scenario that you're describing, that's exactly what happens. So I hope you know that we're aligned on that philosophy, and everything we're building right here is built to get us there. Well, I'm going to commit to doing the first one just to get it done. And if I get that done, I'm going to commit to another one. Feel free to jump in here. We will be ready to record these results, this progress on chain, when we next meet. I won't be able to attend Open Spaces next week because I'll be at the Build conference with the other Cardano devs. Looking really excited about that. So my next time at Open Spaces will be in 2 weeks. So that May, the May 1st date that we're looking at here. So I'll be asynchronously working on content here. If anybody wants to contribute this content, just do everybody else a favor and drop your name here so we don't get any collisions and we know who's working on what. If you want to be an editor like Nelson already did right here, drop your name on the blue sticky. And in 2 weeks, we'll also be able to look at how we are using the treasury to make sure that people get the funds reserved in the proposal for this one. Any questions about how those next steps are going to work? All right, all
Where's
right.
that conference at, James?
It's in Toulouse in France.
Nice.
Cool. Let's talk asynchronously in the PPBL channel and Discord, or it's the Education Circle channel. And yeah, once again, just drop a name here if you do decide to write one of these lessons. That way, people will know that you're committed to it. Awesome. Yeah, I committed to this one previously. I'll throw my name on this one too, because I'll prepare that demo. Alex working on Helios, Nelson on BlueTS. Beautiful. All right. I know we're over time. Let's do a quick checkout round, starting with Alex. Checking out. How you leaving us today?
All right, confused and tired.
Thanks for staying up late.
It's
Harsha,
not late, just thanks for having me.
no. Harsha, how about you?
I'm feeling good. I'm waiting for someone to like start doing that so that I can pick some editor roles, hopefully.
Love it. Thanks. That's a cool approach. Sebastian, how about you?
Really good. Thanks for this session. Very good.
And
Thanks.
Steve.
Good. I appreciate it all.
And Juan.
Hey, I feel great. I wanted to commit to the test others, but I'm not sure about that time, and yeah, you know me. But I look forward to get back and really get involved and learning.
All right. And Ken.
I'm doing fine. Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Cool. I appreciate the time today, everybody. Thanks for diving in. It feels good to be at this kind of fine-grained level and really be moving on this work. 2 weeks, PPBL 2024 will launch. Here we go. Thanks and see you next time, guys.